Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of Konversation with me, Rick,
And me, Naeem.
and this crazy, outrageous, super cool ass guy is
Bruce Wayne.
Bruce Wayne. It could be.
I called him Batman earlier. I was like, he's like 6'4", you know.
He's about the same height, huh?
Yeah, right? Yeah.
This is Nicholas Moreno.
Nicholas Moreno,
And-
down in San Diego in his beautiful home.
Dude, it's a fucking Zen garden
yeah,
is what it is. Not just,
Yeah.
it's an outrageous place. Dude, like, I want to live here, but we wouldn't be able to kill him to get the move, right?
You might be the dog in this house.
Exactly.
Like the actual dog. They might put you a dog house over there. You'll be all right.
So, the reason why we're here, because we met Nicholas, about six years ago?
Yeah.
It's been about that long
in
now.
California.
Right?
6 years ago at the
At
gathering.
one of the gatherings. And we were introduced by Dennis. You know who you are.
Dennis
Duarte.
Mm-hmm.
Dennis says, oh, you guys got to meet this guy. Right? I'm like, okay. He goes, hey, this is Nicholas. Hi. And I'm like, okay, whatever. Just some big guy. All right. But then we got to talking. And one of the things that will always stick with me based on what he had said to us was, let's talk about the water. Can you explain that?
Yeah.
You want to say hi?
Hi, I'm Nick. I'm not used to being on camera. You're going to have to bear with me on that.
We forced this on him.
Yeah, we
I,
did.
I usually
much.
avoid interviews and stuff like that, but I don't mind talking about it. Yeah. We had a conversation about the water at the gathering in terms of everybody uses like an analogy where if you've never done a martial arts style and you're the white belt and you're starting out, that you're drowning in the water, right?
Right.
That the black belts actually have the ability to hunt. They're the shark or the bigger fish. And so when you take a look at different styles of martial arts, it's ways to hunt, right?
Right.
And so I said I wanted to be the one person standing in the room with my hand up asking, can I just talk about the water? That's it. Everybody's got their ideas on how to hunt, and I agree with all of it, whether it's a stand-up art, combatives-based art, grappling art, bladed or weaponed art, like that's all great, but I'm really interested in the geometry and the structure.
Right. And you latched on to us because we were kind of already doing that, me and Danny.
Although we didn't know we were doing
We
that.
didn't know, yeah, because we had no clue what we were doing. We were just saying, this is what we do, and that was it. And he was like, wait a minute, you guys kind of talk my language.
Right.
Let's talk about the water.
Yeah.
And I thought that was fascinating, because here it is, we're like, me and Dan are like, virtually nobody's in the martial arts world, because we were trying to stay low-key, actually. Then Dennis introduced a bunch of people, and then we got to meet you. And you were somebody that stood out to us. Because like you're saying that,
Because he's a foot taller than everybody we know.
yeah, because you're like, oh, who's that giant, right?
So we're like, oh, there he is.
Yeah, that's the guy.
There he is.
But the stuff that you were saying coincided with actually the same stuff that we were saying. We were saying it a little differently, but we understood that, there's...
Yeah, his sounded more legitimate than ours.
Well, that's because he says it more eloquently.
Again,
Quite.
thank you, and thank you. But no, I agree with you guys wholeheartedly. You guys are on the same path, and truth be told is the more research that I did in regards to how geometry applies to the human body, and then more importantly to martial arts and interpolations of either the traditional forms or hand patterns, what have you, right? The games, is that not only is everyone else doing it, everyone has their own specific skill set that they've mastered. And so, as an example, when I was looking for common geometric algorithm, okay,
Right, I remember
and wrist locks and all these different things, it makes you go down a rabbit hole of wrist locks, and then I can remember the days of thinking, hey, I've got this type of wrist lock figured it out. Well, that's until you meet a guy who specializes in his whole style is fucking wrist locks, and then you're like, oh, okay, and then
That
you
was
have this,
terrible.
well,
Yeah.
right, but so here's me at 44 after finally doing this, 30 years, I'm like, okay, the first decade was me actually discovering that people all master these individual things.
Right.
And then when you get a chance to really dive deep, everybody's using geometry.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Everybody's
and they're not so willing or forthright to admit it. They say, no, that's not what it is. This is blah, blah, blah. And they call it whatever, the branding of their own
Ancient
style.
secret.
Yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, you give everybody credit
Yeah,
where it's
oh,
due.
yes,
Like
of course.
without the bloodlines and without the people having that attitude and wanting to preserve culture and preserve history and the why, we wouldn't be where we are now.
Right, exactly,
And
yeah.
so with the advent of the internet, that I find is really entertaining is to say, look up an old Spanish fencing manual, okay, that some guy decided to scan, and because it's over 75 years old, it's public domain, and you can look all of this stuff up, and you'll see the
So
exact...
75 years, that's the benchmark.
Yeah, so like you can go to, oh my goodness, the Wiccan Tower website is one of the best ones out there that has a lot of the old fencing and HEMA manuals. And so you'll find the exact same correlation, the exact same name, the exact same structure being done in the medieval martial arts But then at
Wow.
the same time, I've seen the histories from the Mindanao and the Indonesian arts, and Silat, Kali, and whatever else. And there's an extremely strong cause that this was like, yeah, dude, this was our indigenous warriorship of before. But then like, oh, you talk to Grandmaster Robert Redfeather of the Native Americans, and he's talking about the exact same freaking structures, but he's got these really cool names for them. And so
Cultures
I agree
that
with
never
you.
crossed, but
The cultures that never crossed, but so
But they
they
came
did.
up with the same ideas, and that's so crazy to
well,
me.
there's a lot of
that-
cross migration if you look back into the history of
yeah, if you go really way back, yeah, definitely.
So, where do the ideas really come from? Where do they originated? Does that really matter as much as how well do you interpret it and then use it?
Yeah, because if people miles and miles away from each other are coming up with the same idea, that means the body's is inherently the same wherever you go, and that your thought process of if I do this versus this, wait, everybody's going to know that because you only have the 2 hands and 2 feet.
Yeah.
That's
So at
correct.
some point, everybody's going to be doing the same
Or
thing.
just staring at nature, you start realizing, oh, these blocks have certain lines, and oh, look, the leaf looks like certain little cross sections. Huh?
Yeah, that's how it starts.
So it's everywhere. I mean, like you said, geometry is everywhere. But before we get too deep into the rabbit hole that is your mind,
Very
Sorry.
yeah, that deep chasm.
you said you've been doing this 30 years?
Martial arts, 30 years. That's correct.
How did you start? Where
J.K.
was,
Lee Taekwondo Academy in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Absolutely hated it. Not a fan
Milwaukee.
of
That's where you were originally from?
That's where I'm originally from, and did not dig on that style of martial arts at the time.
Really?
Kung Fu Louie, looking at movies and
Yeah.
imitating our favorite characters.
yeah.
What was your favorite? Big
Mine's
Trouble
a-
in Little China, The Perfect Weapon, Jeff
Dude.
Speakman.
Oh, no, I didn't like
36
speaking too much.
Chambers
He-
of Shaolin,
Yeah.
The
All the
Drunken
old
Master,
all the old Jackie Chan
Yeah.
movies
all the
like
old
coming
Jackie
up.
Chan movies.
Oh my
yeah.
God! Right. So
Jet Li,
yeah, exactly.
Shaolin Temple.
Exactly. So started back then. Really wasn't a fan of the whole taekwondo and all that jazz. Learned a bunch of catch wrestling from a neighbor. Got me started on doing that.
No way.
Catch
Yeah,
wrestling.
catch wrestling. It was
Explain.
shuto.
Okay.
Shuto. So it's
Yeah.
like a form of grappling that I found later on when I started doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu that I don't know enough to know. Somebody else does. Which one predates the other? But a form of wrestling with submissions. And it wasn't pin based. It was holding someone based, like different hugs and the
Yeah,
different arm
like
locks
shoot
and whatever else.
wrestling is another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
And then when I went really deep was when I got into Shaolin Kempo, and that was in Madison, Wisconsin.
Madison,
That's where I have
Wisconsin.
2 black
Oh,
belts.
you went far.
I did. I went from Milwaukee to Madison. It's like an hour and a half.
yeah.
Really went far. Smart ass.
He knows a little bit of geography.
Yeah, and so after doing the Kempo for a while, I got a huge lesson in humility from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu people. They came into town, and there was a dude named John Hines at a place called the Monkey Bar Gym. And
Monkey Bar Gym.
yeah, it was
Shout out.
shout out. He's still doing his things.
Wow.
Yeah, no, he's got like 13 locations. He's a really smart guy, and he basically does everything off of body weight and animal movements.
Wow.
And he's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, directly under this Rickson Gracie lineage through Luis Cláudio. It goes Rickson Gracie, then Luis. And so all I knew is that I was the area Kempo hotshot back in those early 90s, and they introduced me to Luis, and Luis came in and absolutely mauled me on the mat. And the guy's 135 pounds.
I was gonna say, am I to assume that Luis is like?
He's teeny tiny. He's very, very good. He was a dual world champion at that time.
Right.
And I was obviously in that same adage, white belt, drowning in the water,
Right.
no idea what I'm doing, and was completely humbled by that. Made bi-yearly trips to Brazil to start training jiu-jitsu down there under him.
Wow.
Have
Holy
been
sh-
sticking with that since 1997.
So you still go every once in a while down there? To
I still
train?
keep in contact with him all the time. He's actually based in Chicago now.
Oh wow!
So he's got schools all over. He's a great guy.
Right.
And then the bladed arts and all that stuff, like, I wouldn't say that I could really count my organized knowledge in that as organized until I met Grandmaster Green and Grandmaster Carlito. To be humble,
Where
like,
did
there's
you
a lot
meet?
of people.
Where did you meet Master Green?
Master Green, I got introduced through Rocky Twitchell coming up to your guys' area, and that was for one of the what do you call those? Not the gathering. What does Mike Cardenas do? I'm sorry.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
the culture exchange, right?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Martial arts culture exchange, right? So he had gone up there, and that's when I had first got introduced to him, and that's kind of when everything had changed. Like, I love dual pattern recognition. I love doing both sides of the body stuff. The Kempo taught me a lot of that.
Right.
I loved moving with the blade. But Grandmaster Green, yeah, he was the humbler. I mean, he just came in and literally squashed it. And then, like, when he's, like special forces guy, you guys have interviewed him, okay?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He has a way of just speaking definitively about things, and he really put things into perspective for me. And then Grandmaster Carlito, he's the one that exposed me to the Serrata templates, and in my opinion, those are the most pure ones out there that I found. There's no dilution.
Yeah, the way he teaches them, definitely.
Yeah, we finally got to see
Just my personal opinion.
what inside and outside one could really be, rather than what just everybody's showing. We
didn't have enough of it to really understand, but
Right.
after talking to him and getting a sense
We
of
got a really
where it came from,
good
you're like,
understanding.
oh, this
That's
is
what
what
you
it
could do.
actually means.
Because the traditional way of people demoing it was like, oh, the guy feeds and leaves the hand there. Then you get to do all the stuff, and I've always thought, well, whoever does this, it's it's full swings. And he said, yeah, you can do that, but here. And then he would do, and like, oh! Freaked us out when we saw it finally.
Yeah.
Because he had Naeem do a full swing.
You out, you were behind the camera. I was right there.
Naeem does it and gets goes, okay, so that's how it's supposed to work. Because you never see that. I mean, prior to him showing us, I'd never seen it delivered or presented that way.
Right.
And we were just blown away.
That's my exact point. That's why I was very upfront and humble about that. Until I met those guys, I had practiced Kali patterns. I had done Serrata before. I had done Arnis and this or that. And you get a pattern, and as a young man at that time, I was, I've got it, right? Show me the next pattern. Show me the next variation of the pattern, or what's the next part of the drill. And like I was obsessed with that type of learning. But not until I met those two guys, and they went over timing, and they started teaching you the guts of why you do it, and then the symmetry on both sides. That changed the whole game.
Would it surprise you to know that we don't do that stuff that you're saying that you wouldn't do anymore?
Well, see, and that's the thing. I
never
had sworn it off.
Yeah,
I thought,
we don't. We just
I lock myself in these patterns, but then the truth of it is that if you have, totally humbled by it, if you have the proper instructor, and they're showing you what the patterns are for, all of a sudden everything
don't exist.
That's a big thing.
It's a huge thing, and so. Yeah, that's where I would attribute almost all of my understanding.
The closest that we say to a pattern is Sinawali, and it isn't so much to learn that pattern of Sinawali, it's to learn what you get from the patterns. Like you were saying, if you understand what this is all about, the patterns don't really matter. When we get to the demo part, I'll have Naeem show you when we do a sombrata, it's no longer really about the actual each piece of the sombrata. It's all the things that you draw from it, and
this will be after the demo because we're here to showcase his stuff. Not ours.
Yes, definitely.
You guys crack me up.
Well, you forgot there was a camera, didn't you?
And I keep forgetting that. No, because our show is never about being in the camera. We just talk.
Which is why I want to talk about him. Not. Anyways, so
we'll get to him in a minute. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, so he started at 14.
14.
He went.
You did the math on that fast? I'm impressed.
What?
Yeah.
The math was from before.
Yeah.
44.
But he said 44
Anyways,
and you said 30 years.
You said that.
Boom, I got it. Hey, I'm there.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yay, me. I get a
So we had
cookie.
gotten all the way up into the part that I had met Grandmaster Green
Right.
and
Yes.
Grandmaster Carlito. And the interesting part about having those two guys as my instructors is that we have I would call it a full art, the Serrata that Grandmaster Carlito teaches, the Angel Kabbalah stuff. From the the formalized feeds like you talk about, angled systems, disarms, all these various things. And then there's a strict combative knife curriculum that Grandmaster Green put out. Right. And the syllable is military friendly for military point of instruction for transitioning to sidearms and moving for control to the primary and tertiary weapons. And so what I find it was very confusing in the beginning, but it took a while for me to understand, but now I get it, is that say you are learning a Serrata move and it has 5 syllables, right? Grandmaster Green will typically concentrate on the first 2 syllables because he understands that the rest of this stuff, it's not that it's not important, it's just another example of what you're actually doing in the first syllable. It's a system of redundancy. Right. And so after talking with various people about it and testing it against Marines and different people from the
testing it on the
Marines.
Come here.
No, just like literally getting put under dynamic testing with them and getting a chance to see whether or not I either know what I'm talking about or I get my head pancaked. I went through 16 months of getting beaten up at the Marine Corps base.
Wow.
Different friends of mine. How's it going, Bill Super Beast Radabaugh? How's it going,
Bill?
John Brick, Antoine Gibson, Bo Hancock, Tommy Lee. I can keep listing. We can just keep going down the line.
There's going to be
These
an
are all
hour
guys.
of names.
Yeah, I'm not trying to forget anybody. I'm just
The
literally
second
going.
part will be the rankings
Nick
of
Lawler,
these
hi,
names.
how's it going? Tyson Hicks, all these people just completely leveled me on the map. And I started
But,
to realize.
and that's surprising to hear that you got level, because I've seen. I mean, you're freaking.
So you move.
Yeah, I
Thanks.
mean, you're
Appreciate
freaking
that.
amazing.
I owe that to them, because like there's the truth of it is that when you think you've got something figured out, there are specialists in that area. So when people like to talk military combatives with me, I start giggling, because I can list 5 guys I know whose ability to be in the moment dynamically
Right.
and trash people, and I mean thrash people that are part of like urban combatives.
Right.
I've seen different guys that are affiliated with Doug Markita and other dudes
Right.
who, what's the name of the SEALOC guy? Help me out. I'm just
Sea
having a
Lion. That's
blank.
Jeff Davidson.
No.
No, the Maestro.
Oh,
Maestro.
yeah.
Those guys hit super fucking hard. I've also met a ton of other guys that are part of SOC B, people are part of Modern Army Combatives, dudes that just thrash each other. And so you have to ask yourself, like, okay, we're talking combatives. All right, okay, that's great. Which part?
Yeah, right.
Like, what are you
'Cause there's
talking
so
about? Are
much,
you talking about like transitioning from the gun to the knife? Are you talking about the wall work or getting snapped?
Right.
Like, and then you have people who are focused on the drills that they believe that they can put together that
Right.
are supposed to like accumulate to your ability to do it spontaneously. And there's this argument that goes on back and forth that if you have the drills and you're doing the drills correctly with the secret juju that I know, that it'll magically appear under stress. And then you have, it seems to me that, there's the stress-based environment people that are like, hey, we're going to test everything under stress, and there's no value in the drill.
Wow.
Yeah, those are. So where do you fall in that?
I like to increase metrics. I have always had the pleasure of working with people that are simultaneously telling me what to do. So that was always been a very huge misconception when people saw me first volunteering for military elements. They thought, how does this young guy know exactly what to teach? And what they didn't realize is that the staff of people that I was put in front of were all martial arts instructor trainers within the Marine Corps. So these are all the red tabs, all the experts. Right. And they're not just one at first and second degree black belts. They're the fucking top of the top. And these guys are the ones saying, we want you to come in and volunteer for our class. And they're going to pick and choose the different techniques or different principles that they believe are advantageous to their existing point of instruction. Do you understand? So they're not looking at me going, here's the next best way, they told me openly when I first started doing this, there's a lot of guys that come in and they're hella martial artists, but the truth is that they fail because they don't realize that we already have 700 pages of our own instruction. Right. They have TAM belt up to fucking 5th degree black belt. They have moral stuff to teach along the way, the tie-ins, there's cohesion rooms that they do, there's kicks, punches, grappling, felling, throwing, weapons, transitions so like all this stuff is a part of it.
Curriculums there,
exactly. And so to come in as a subject matter expert and to be like, this is the new and next greatest way, that's the quickest way to fail. So what I did is I went in there and said, okay, because I do everything with my nerd geometry, is I said, hey, let me come in and say, okay, so if you guys want hand speed, is that what we're talking about today? Okay, let me increase your hand speed. And they were like, oh. And then I was like, okay, now we're doing person under control, locking, small joint locking, and get to the ground and get cuffs. I'm like, let me increase the torque on all of your locks no matter what. And they're like, okay. And then I was like, okay, so now we're doing actual sparring, and then okay, now we're doing gun disarms, and like within the different subjects, I had the ability to break down the motion geometrically to increase the metrics that they already wanted in their class. So in the beginning, I wasn't even teaching.
You're just giving them what they wanted.
I just was giving them the tools to then they would turn around and actually increase the metrics, and that was the start of the relationship to where I eventually was given their point of instruction, which was really cool. I'm friends with Bill today still. I mentioned him earlier. Hi, Bill, Super Beast Radabah. He was the chief instructor at School of Infantry West Advanced Infantry Training Battalion. And they handed me this 7-inch stack of shit. And that was like now we're friends now.
Information.
No, I mean it was a 7-inch stack of tan all the way up to the advanced degrees.
Wow.
And he admitted to me later as friends, looking back, that he was like, this was my send-off. Like, we already know what we're doing. Well, I'll be surprised if I see you again. But he didn't expect me to literally sit there, diligently read it, internalize it, and come back within like 2 weeks and go, okay,
here's a different book.
No. I said here's the exact same thing. I said, but here's all the overlaps. Because I do pattern recognition, and I was like, if you concentrate on these things, this is exactly how we can do this. And it worked. And so I've had a chance to now travel to the East Coast and teach at the MACE, the Martial Arts Center of Excellence there, and meet Lieutenant Colonel Shusko, founder of the program. I've had a chance to teach at different military installations in between West and East Coast. I spent the majority of my time at Camp Pendleton with the MIITs.
So I have a question about that because I'm curious. Were you ever in the military?
No.
So how are you, a non-military guy,
Civvy.
teaching? Is that just a special contract that or do you have to get some kind of official like title to say
Signed a waiver.
sign a waiver, and that's it?
In perpetuity.
I will not sue the government.
No, I
if
signed a waiver. The first person who got me hooked up was Nick Lawler, Staff Sergeant Nick Lawler. He was the chief instructor at Weapons Field Training Battalion, Edson Range. And there was a dude who was in a jiu-jitsu class with me who was a Marine, Gilmore, Staff Sergeant Gilmore, who's now Gunny Sergeant, I believe. And if I'm not mistaken, we still call you Happy. Happy Gilmore, what's up? He's the motherfucker who saw me at the jiu-jitsu gym in the corner doing blades and asked me to come volunteer, and that was the first time.
What?
I have prided myself on never accepting any money from the Marines. I will not.
That's
Try to step on the toes of active duty servicemen to build a reputation. The only reason why I feel very comfortable doing it is from the encouragement of their staff, getting
Right.
their black belt, going through their cohesion rooms, doing their courses, time
so
and
they
time
gave
and
you,
time
and you
again,
decided
getting
that you want to
beat up.
give back. That's awesome.
Well, Grandmaster Green and I talked about this because his interpolations of the Serrata are very violent. Like, I'm not, joking around. Like,
Right.
he's ex-Special Forces Green Beret, and he wants to creep up on you and put a knife in you in a way where it cannot be tourniqueted and it cannot be resuscitated afterwards. And so there's only one place that this type of training really belongs. And so
Right.
when we had the opportunity to work with the Marines, instead of doing it passively, I was very aggressive about learning their POI and teaching through their point of instruction the last 7 years. And that's what makes me different. I can use the same verbiage. I know exactly what their courses are like from start to finish on deck, and I know at what point I can volunteer what information.
That's amazing.
Dude,
That's what I do.
2
I
weeks.
volunteer.
Yeah,
2 weeks of studying the 7 inches worth of information.
It's right in there if you want to look at it.
that's crazy.
2 weeks, and he